This is CBC Here and Now.
The very first iceberg has been spotted in Cooling Gate, and that must mean tourism season is on the way. Whatever that looks like.
It's going to be very hard to make a go of it. And actually, I can't see where we are going to make a go of it.
I'm Garrett Berry here in Cooling Gate, and I'll bring you that story coming up on Here and Now.
Well, a blocking pattern means the RDF is going to continue, but there is a little break in the forecast towards the end of the week.
And our team is like a dog with a bone when it comes to finding a source of infection.
Meet the team that had to track down more than 4,000 contacts in the last COVID-19 outbreak. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. Well, just a day after Here and Now spoke with high school students who say they want to head back to the classroom.
Well, the English School District says talks are happening about a potential return to in-person instruction.
High school students in this province are still doing classes online, but one expert says there's a huge gap in learning.
Here Now's Heather Gillis has this update.
What's becoming clear is there is something called the COVID slide.
Paul Bennett is an education consultant with the Schoolhouse Institute in Nova Scotia. He says students' learning has been fragmented over the past year. Schools shut down last March when COVID first arrived. Kids were off over the summer until school resumed in September, then moved online for weeks in February when COVID-19 flared up again. K-9 kids went back last month, but high schoolers are still online.
I think there's a huge gap here, and I suspect, and they're already called the pandemic generation of students, I suspect we're going to see the impact for years to come.
He says students are falling far below where they're expected to be, especially when it comes to reading and math. He says the pandemic is especially hard on young elementary students and high schoolers.
I really think we should be going back to school.
Who told Here and Now yesterday they find online learning difficult.
Some of those higher level specialized subjects, it's very hard to teach yourself, particularly in higher level mathematics and science, the lack of labs.
Meanwhile, the English School District says it's talking with the Education Department and Public Health about ways to maximize in-class instruction for high school students. In a statement, it says, as a district, we always prioritize in-school learning where public health indicates it's safe to do so. In New Brunswick, high school students are expected back in class full-time April 12th. In Nova Scotia, schools are open to in-person learning, though some have closed intermittently for cleaning after positive cases. In PEI, school is online for 2 weeks before Christmas, but kids are back in person except for a 3-day break from school in the beginning of March.
The best of all options is to be properly resourced in a regular school with teachers given ample time to provide additional instruction and to recognize that there is a huge gap that needs to be recovered.
Meanwhile, the Education Department says it's too early to say what's going to happen with high schools because talks are ongoing. They say they should have an update by the end of the week. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, an area low pressure stalled just to the south of the Maritimes, bringing lots of moisture our way with some periods of rain, which were heavy at times earlier today. They're heading towards the west coast as well. And that's generally going to be the story as we head through the next, next little bit, really. The visibility has come up just a little bit now, reporting 2.4 kilometers for St. John's. And then the further away from those easterlies, the better the visibility. Certainly, that's the story up through Labrador as well, as Cartwright's seeing that dense fog, but Happy Valley Goose Bay, just some cloud cover this afternoon. Over the next 24 hours, this is what the metro looks like. A whole lot more of that cloud cover, cool temperatures, and relatively light easterlies. But I'll get into the full forecast details and a little bit of a break when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, police are reporting that an 18-year-old died in Deer Lake last Thursday. 2 males were canoeing in Deer Lake across from Pasadena Beach in the afternoon when their canoe capsized. One made it safely to shore while the other did not. The teen's body was recovered by search and rescue. Both people were wearing life jackets. And on the Burin Peninsula, a man died after a motorcycle crash last Thursday in Burin Bay Arm. The RCMP say a 41-year-old rider had a learner's permit. They say he lost control after trying to pass another vehicle and then struck the embankment on the side of the road. He was wearing a helmet, but it came off during the crash. Police say speed is believed to be a contributing factor. The Atlantic bubble isn't set to begin for 2 more weeks, but Nova Scotia has made a move today that shakes things up. It's allowing people from this province into theirs without having to isolate starting tomorrow. Premier Ian Rankin says low case numbers have made loosening restrictions possible. So if you're traveling by plane or taking the Marine Atlantic ferry, you'll be free to travel. Other maritime provinces can also enter Nova Scotia without having to isolate, though Rankin says he's watching developments in New Brunswick closely. Here's how else Nova Scotia regulations are changing.
Malls, retail businesses, and fitness facilities can now return to 100% capacity with physical distancing, and that's as of 8 a.m. tomorrow. Also, sports, games, training, and arts and culture rehearsals and performances can have 75 people. While physical distancing and masks are not required for the activities, they are recommended when possible. Spectators can continue to be allowed at these events except for at our schools. We'll monitor this very closely and be nimble as we have been, and we will shut down when we need to.
Nova Scotia reported 6 new cases of COVID-19 today. Now, these new travel rules don't change our provincial restrictions, so anyone traveling from Nova Scotia to this province still has to isolate for 14 days. This all comes ahead of the Atlantic bubble, which is expected to open on or before April 19th.
Well, sticking with travel, the very first icebergs are starting their journey to our coastlines. That means the tourism season is quickly approaching, but operators in Twillingate are faced with more questions than answers today as they try to plan for next steps. Here now's Garrett Berry has more.
Here they come. This one's traveled thousands of miles.
It's a beautiful thing. It reminds you summer's coming. It's usually a sign for me to get ready.
Because in a few weeks' time, he hopes the bays will be full, and so will the boats.
The attraction to the rest of the world is, you can't question that. I mean, if you start showing off icebergs, it's just a unique thing.
It was the safest bet around that these bergs would draw bunches to Twillingate. But this year...
Do I want myself personally to see the open up the country as we sit today? No. I really don't.
It's a complicated, expensive question. Just take this dinner theater, where 75% of business comes from Ontario.
Ontario is our hub, and without Ontario, our businesses here ain't going to function right. We can't.
This isn't just a story of a handful of businesses feeling the pinch, the normal up and down in the business world. Twillingate is now filled with tourism operations, dozens and dozens that haven't made any real money since the fall of 2019.
Previous year, we run just under 15,000 people. Last year, we run 3,200. Staycationers, I mean, is great. I mean, I'm glad we had at least that much business. But when you're running a staff of 13 people plus in this building, it's impossible to do it.
Multiply that pain by every business in town, and you'll start to see why some are getting itchy.
But as a business owner in the tourism arena right now, what I would like to see is some thoughtfulness around how can we open up.
Everyone knows it's complicated. That's why this owner of a pretty large hotel is calling for a plan.
If we're not prepared, if we at least don't have a thoughtful plan, then I don't know how we're ever going to get there. I don't think we can just throw the doors open.
When travel does reopen, Scott believes his town has a competitive advantage.
I mean, we have a very unique thing here in Newfoundland. I mean, you just can't get this all over Canada.
That's part of the reason he's expanding, building a whole new addition to his business, ignoring these pandemic headwinds.
And I mean, if you've got a long-term plan, I mean, this is just a big bump in the road. It's a big bump in the road. But you know what? We see a future here, and we want to continue on.
Garrett Berry, CBC News, Twillingate.
While talking about COVID, there are no new cases of COVID-19 today, with one new recovery. That makes just 3 active cases in the province, none of which are in hospital. We're going to introduce you now to a frontline face you may not recognize, and that's Suzette Spurl. She's a communicable disease control nurse, and from her home office, she's been leading Eastern Health's contact tracing team. Health Minister John Haggie has called them the best in the country.
Our team has been very successful in identifying sources of the infections. We have had over 90% success rate in identifying the source and connecting the source back to a case or an event where there was an outbreak.
Well, you'll be able to hear the key role that Suzette Spurl and her team played in the most recent outbreak, delivering test results to the public, doing detective work to uncover potential contacts between cases. We'll have my feature interview with Suzette Spurl coming up in about 30 minutes on Here and Now.
A frustrating development for the Halibu First Nation. The group says it's shocked to learn the federal government has halted any further discussions regarding members of the Federation of Newfoundland Indians. They've been in talks with the Department of Indigenous Affairs for years to reconsider the status of thousands of members initially rejected under the new status requirements. Here Now's Colleen Connors reports.
Yeah, we're in shock. And for us at Halibu, this is a tough day, a gloomy day. We thought we were working in good faith with the Government of Canada, and it appears that right now we are not.
He received this letter saying any ongoing discussions about reinstating members is paused, halted, over.
This is a tough situation, and everybody needs to be aware of what happened here.
The struggle to get status of Mi'kmaq in this province spans 10 years now. The Federation of Newfoundland Indians is a group that makes up several Mi'kmaq bands, but snags in the Halibu First Nation enrollment process meant thousands of members were rejected because of the self-identification criteria. Applicants had to demonstrate residence or sustained active involvement in the community and include participation in cultural and social life.
Those 3 right here have been denied, and those 3 have been accepted.
In this case, some siblings received status, others didn't. It left thousands of people with no status at all. Government promised to reevaluate the membership list in 2018, promising to continue the conversations in 2019-2020. Many who didn't get their status have taken their grievances through the court system. Now there is a class action over the Halibu First Nation enrollment process to challenge the recognition of the Halibu Mi'kmaq Band and seek money and other benefits for those rejected. In that letter to Mitchell, Indigenous Services says discussions are halted because of active litigation. He thinks that's just an excuse.
Getting a letter from Indigenous Services of Canada saying we're pausing or halting any further discussion based on the litigation outcome is kind of inconsistent with what we've been doing.
Mitchell is calling on anyone affected to raise their frustrations with their local members of Parliament. MP Goody Hutchings is already speaking out. In a letter to the minister, she says, those FNI members that lost their status for whatever reason have been impacted by this loss. Many are struggling with their identity as First Nation individuals. These individuals deserve to officially belong to the Halibu Band. They have fought for their rights and the rights of their people for many years.
We talked about the need to work together in a nation-to-nation relationship. We talked about working together in the true spirit of reconciliation. Where has all that gone now in light of what just happened?
Mitchell has requested the pause on discussions be reversed immediately. He says he truly doesn't know what will happen next. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Corner Brook.
Well, CBC contacted Indigenous Services Canada for comment. It sent a short statement that said it's continuing to work with the Halibu First Nation on next steps and details will be forthcoming. It did not provide a timeline on when those details or when those next steps would happen.
Cannabis sales in this province went up last year, so much so that the Newfoundland and Labrador Liquor Corporation is going to add more retailers around the province. President Bruce Keating says in the past year people spent $55 million on pot. That's about $18 million or 50% more than the year before. Keating says there's still demand out there and the illegal trade is flourishing in areas where there isn't a licensed retailer. So they're going to award about 15 licenses, up from the current 30, most of which are around St. John's. Keating says in the past 2 years the price of cannabis has dropped and there's a lot more variety. So by comparison, alcohol sales were up 6% in the last year. People spent about $230 million on booze.
Lots of rain, drizzle, and fog for the past couple of days. Unfortunately, this continues potentially into next week, but I'll have those details in your full long-range forecast coming up.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Bonus deadline is midnight Friday, April 9th. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Well, Ashley, it's certainly not pretty out there, but at least all of the rain, drizzle, and fog has put a real dent in the snow.
Yes, actually, I was noticing today there's one little patch of snow still left on my deck, and it won't go away.
Smaller and smaller.
Yeah, but it just won't go away. I don't know what's happening, but this is when I'm going to start to sound like a broken record when we start talking about RDF for the next couple of days, unfortunately. It looks like that might continue into next week. So let's talk about what's happening now, though. Temperatures today in that easterly flow pretty chilly, 4 degrees in St. John's. Similar temperatures pretty much across the board, except Stephenville was the hot spot across the province today, reached 14 degrees. And then temperatures above 0 for Labrador as well. Cartwright at 1 degree and Churchill Falls at 5. We've lost a few degrees here and there. Stephenville down to 11 degrees and right now sitting at 3 in St. John's. Taking a look at the winds, not too bad out there. Currently we're seeing about 15 km/h winds now. Generally seeing those easterlies, 30 km/h for Stephenville. Not a whole lot of wind to speak of up across the Big Land either. And these showers that are moving through are generally going to continue as we head through the overnight tonight. They're a little bit heavy at times through the Burin Peninsula as well as the Clarenville area. You'll see that generally continue, and all of this moisture as well. So this is a relative humidity, lots of moisture in play. The deeper greens you can see over the province, and then that spinning area of low pressure, that's funneling all of that moisture our way, and that's generally going to continue through Wednesday into Thursday. By Friday, we start to see a little bit of a break in that moisture for the West Coast as well as Labrador, allowing a little bit more sunshine to develop or be in play through the forecast. And then that will generally continue as we head into Saturday. However, we'll see that shift in the winds, bringing some of that colder air and also the potential for a few flurries in the forecast. So we're going to trade for a little bit. Taking a look at the satellite, or at least the future tracker for tonight, those periods of rain were generally going to continue and drizzle up through Labrador. Some cooler temperatures in play for you, so you might even see some freezing drizzle overnight tonight, and then temperatures sitting anywhere from 2 to 5 degrees across the island, with those easterlies continuing about 20 to 40 km/h. Through the day tomorrow, again, that easterly flow. So we're going to see some periods of rain through the first half of the day. That'll give way to drizzle into the afternoon. Some periods of rain will continue, though, for the Burin Peninsula as well as the Southern Avalon as we head into the afternoon and evening hours. And then showers, the story for the Northern Peninsula as well as through central Labrador through the afternoon, but you start to see some clearing skies, like I mentioned, potentially into the overnight or late afternoon and into the overnight for the southwestern portion of the island. Now, as far as rainfall amounts go, we're still going to see some periods of rain, like I said, could amount to somewhere between 10 to 20 millimeters of rain, particularly for the northern Avalon as well as the Bonavista Peninsula and then Bonavista North and then the eastern portion of the Northern Peninsula as well as we get into Thursday. Here's a look at the forecast for tomorrow. Across the eastern areas, anywhere from 3 to 4 degrees, with those winds generally about 20 to 40 km/h. Now, a little bit further away towards Placentia and Marystown, you could reach those 8 to 10 degree range. As we head into central, again, the areas of fog, drizzle and showers will continue through the first half of the day. 7 degrees in Gander, Grand Falls, Windsor, you should reach a high near 8 degrees. Towards the southwest, temperatures significantly warmer. Stephenville should see another double-digit day with that sunshine peeking out into the afternoon. Might even see some peaks of sun through Burgeo and Port aux Basques as well, certainly through Gros Morne, sitting around 12 degrees. And then for the Northern Peninsula, you're still stuck in those single digits with areas of drizzle and some showers for the southeast as well, 2 to 3 degrees. For Nain, you're looking at a temperature near 1 degree, but overall, maybe a few peaks of sun for Makkovik. Otherwise, we're looking at drizzle for Labrador through to Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Your temperatures between 3 to 4 degrees. Now, when I come back, we'll talk about the potential for some snow for the weekend and then look at the long-range forecast.
Thanks, Ashley. An update on a controversial plan that the City of St. John says will make trails more accessible, but that opponents say will pave over nature.
Last night, Council voted unanimously to proceed with making the Kelly's Brook Trail multi-use.
It's been a hot-button issue with various groups weighing in. St. John's held engagement sessions on the project that comes with an estimated $2 million price tag.
Yesterday, it voted to move forward with the design phase of the project and has decided that asphalt will be the best surface to use. The trail aims to connect the west and east ends of the city, with the trail running from Columbus Drive to Kingsbridge Road.
A handful of men forced entry into my home. They told me I was under arrest for transmission of child pornography, which was not the case. And I had to go alone to my bedroom with this young man who had a gun.
Her terrifying real-life encounter with police served as inspiration for her debut novel. Author Eva Crocker will tell us how a botched police investigation led to her winning this year's Winterset Award. Coming up. The debut novel from St. John's writer Eva Crocker has won the 2020 Winterset Award. The novel, All I Ask, is inspired in part by an alarming real-life encounter Crocker had with police in St. John's and also by the Muskrat Falls Project. Author Eva Crocker joins me now from Montreal. So first of all, congratulations on the award.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here.
Well, in your novel, you give us a glimpse into an experience that you had with police officers who showed up at your door. Can you walk us through what happened there and also how that encounter became fodder for your novel?
Sure. So it's based on a real incident that happened to me in 2017. A group of RNC officers forced entry into my home based on months old information. They were looking for somebody who had lived at my address in the past, but I didn't know who held a different lease. So a handful of men forced entry into my home. They told me I was under arrest for transmission of child pornography, which was not the case. They refused to let me use a phone, which is illegal. They didn't read me my rights, which is illegal. More men burst in through the back door. This was like 8 o'clock in the morning, so I hadn't had a chance to get dressed or anything. And I had to go alone to my bedroom with this young man who had a gun. And I am sure that that incident would have been far more terrifying and far more dangerous for me if I weren't a white cisgender woman, if English weren't my first language, if I had children there with me or a health condition. But it was still deeply disturbing. And what happened that day was that they realized that I wasn't the person they were looking for. But if that wasn't the case, they would have confiscated my electronics and started combing through them and looking for evidence of illegal activity. So the book begins with a fictionalized account of that incident, and then it's kind of a fictionalized exploration of the aftermath of the account. And it's also a queer love story. So there's some happy stuff in there too.
So why did you want to take that experience and then put that in your novel?
Well, I wanted to capture what life was like in St. John's in 2017. And I think a big part of that story was a distrust of the police that was brewing in the wake of the Snellgrove trial, the Don Dunphy murder, the violent arrest of protesters at the Muskrat Falls site. There was lots in the media at that time about the fact that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians don't trust the police, that they don't make them feel safe. And I think as we've seen, a powerful movement from Black Lives Matter and that incident that happened to me, which is really a small thing in the context of the violence that some people face from police, there needed to be more work done on the investigative side. There was no need to rush in with all these police officers into a situation that hadn't even been fully investigated. But that, I think, is one of the impacts of the inflated budget that they have and the over-militarization that we're seeing of the police in Canada right now.
And you just mentioned Muskrat Falls. I mentioned it off the top as well, that that project also plays a role in the novel. Can you tell us more about that?
The culture is so much informed in Newfoundland right now by the financial situation and the political situation that's revolving around Muskrat Falls. And that's influencing so much of life there. The epic failure of that project is impacting people's lives in so many diverse ways. So I wanted to write about that as well.
And I have to mention, it seems like a talent for writing runs in your family. Your mother is one of the most celebrated writers in this province, Lisa Moore. How big of a role did she play in your development as a writer?
Both my parents, love reading and writing and making art, and I'm sure that has had a huge influence in the person that I am and the things that I'm passionate about. And yeah, I love my family very much.
And one of the great things about the Winterset Prize, it comes with not just the prestige, but also, the prize money, just over $12,000, which I'm sure is quite a nice cushion. Can you tell us what's next for you?
Sure. So right now I'm doing a PhD at Concordia, and I'm also working on a novel that's going to be published with House of Anansi Press. And I'm doing freelance writing as well. So this money is going to give me some time to really focus on my next novel and to be able to work on that in a really serious way. And I'm really excited to have that opportunity.
Well, Eva Crocker, it'll be nice to see what happens next for you. Congratulations once again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome back to Here and Now. When someone tests positive for COVID-19, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. Well, tonight we want to show you what it took to contain the recent outbreak and talk about one of the teams that was key to keeping the variant from spreading further.
Imagine trying to change a flat tire on a truck without a jack and without a tire iron. That's what you're doing if you don't have contact tracing in the middle of a pandemic. It's crucial. You can't live without it.
We wouldn't be where we are if we didn't have the team that we had, for sure.
As the cases piled up, so did the work for the team at Eastern Health. 575 cases were tied to the outbreak that centered in Mount Pearl. But that's only part of the story. Public Health had to get in contact with 4,606 contacts to get them isolated and tested. That work fell to a team of public health nurses. Suzette Spurl was at the center of this as a communicable disease control nurse. Tonight, she takes us inside that outbreak and describes how her team helped contain it. When did you first realize that the cases we were dealing with in February were different from what we were used to dealing with when it comes to COVID in this province?
We were dealing with 100 cases a day at one point, so it felt like we were getting cases every 5 minutes. We were getting about 60 to 100 cases a day. We knew that there was something different about this virus than we had seen before, and we weren't surprised when we heard the variant was a part of the equation here. One of my coworkers described it well when we had time to reflect last week. She described it as though we were hit by a COVID-19 missile. That is exactly how we felt. We felt that there was something big going on here, and we had to act fast and try to control the spread quickly.
We hear at the briefings contact tracing is underway. It's kind of one little line. What does that actually mean behind the scenes for you and your team?
We conduct a detailed interview with every case of COVID-19, and during that interview, we ask questions such as exposure criteria, which is very important, and also symptom onset date to determine infectious period of the case. And of course, then we collect their contacts as well. Our team takes contact tracing very seriously. We do not leave one stone unturned. We have cases of COVID-19 who have no contacts. And we also have cases of COVID-19. In the most recent outbreak, we have a case, the most contacts for one case was 189 contacts. That is a lot of contacts for one case. So of course, that case would not be able to identify the names of every single contact that we have. So basically what we do then is we collect lists. So we find out where that case has been. Their workplace, we'll get lists from their workplace, workmates, lists from team sports, activities, social events, things like that. We also look at putting out media advisories, and you've seen that a lot with the last outbreak that we had. We had a lot of media advisories saying that, there was a case of COVID-19 in a certain business or establishment or whatnot. We also take every single contact seriously. So basically, we've gone as far before as finding out or getting permission from the case to basically contact an establishment where they were dropped off to get security footage from that establishment so that we can find one contact, which is the driver that dropped them off at the establishment. It could have been a taxi or a shuttle bus. But we have identified the driver just by that surveillance footage so that we can contact him and have him isolated and tested.
How big a role do you think that leaving no stone unturned played in being able to quickly get this most recent outbreak under control?
I think it played a huge role. We identified our first case in this outbreak on February the 6th. And we did a media advisory at that time because we had a case that had no source or no epilink. And our team is like a dog with a bone when it comes to finding the source of infection. So if we get a case that's not epilinked in our province, to us as a red flag goes off. Basically what happens is that we feel that maybe there's community spread here. So we want to make sure that we track down the source of the infections. Our team has been very successful in identifying sources of the infections. We have had over 90% success rate in identifying the source and connecting the source back to a case or an event where there was an outbreak.
When you look at a place like Ontario, which has community spread, 60% of their cases, they aren't able to trace back and know the origin. Why is our record so much better than theirs?
I think it's because of our amazing team. Our core team of 8 CDC nurses has collectively over 200 years of experience in public health. That, in addition to the fact that we have brought on board other public health nurses and professionals, we have hundreds of years of experience in public health and on our teams. We use the principles for case management and contact tracing that we use in our daily work to control the spread of other diseases such as STIs and TB and STIs is sexually transmitted infections, TB and meningitis. And we keep the processes the same. So we know what worked well in the past with other outbreaks. And we also continue to use that. So basically what I mean is that we treat 1 case a day the same as we would with 100 cases a day. There are times that, don't get me wrong, in the most current outbreak that we thought we were losing control of the virus, but we managed to remain calm. And we certainly supported each other because it was really stressful for our team.
When you do have cases where you can't find the source, and we've seen them throughout the course of COVID-19, every once in a while, you have a case, try and look as hard as you can't find it. How much does it weigh on you when you can't solve that mystery?
I don't sleep at night. I got to find the source if at all possible. We knew there was something going on in the eastern region. We had a couple of cases in the prior to this outbreak that we couldn't find a source for. So we had to basically look at doing some advisories and things like that. Our team is all the same. We're totally invested in controlling the spread of COVID-19, and yeah, we do not rest until we find that source. Yeah.
What difference does the variant make in how you do your job?
At times, like I said, we felt like we were dealing with a totally new virus. We've seen very high attack rates in households. What I mean by that is that in the old virus, I'll call it, old COVID, we could have a case isolated away from others in a room in the home, and they would not get COVID, the other people in the household. However, in this, with the variant, it was very infectious, and we've seen nearly 100% in some cases attack rates in households. So even if the person isolated away from everyone else stayed in their same room, we still had transmission within that household.
What can people do in order to make life easier for you and your team?
Well, our team knows firsthand the serious impact that COVID-19 has on cases, their families, and their friends. Peter, we've interviewed nearly 1,000 cases and heard their stories, heard the fear in their voices when we gave them their diagnosis of COVID-19. And we've seen families devastated when their loved ones are hospitalized or pass away. So we want to prevent this from happening again, and we want to stress the importance of following public health measures. Especially keep your contacts low, and if you're sick, stay home and get tested. We don't want people to get complacent and not get tested. Testing is really important, and keeping your contacts low is very important. This will help us continue to do this very important work to keep everyone safe. And I feel, Peter, we all have a common goal in mind, and that is to do our best every day to control the spread of COVID-19 and to support and take care of each other along the way.
Well, thank you very much for joining me and sharing a little bit about your experience in this most recent outbreak and the role that you play. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for taking the time to listen to our important work.
New research suggests tens of thousands of students across the country have dropped off the school radar. It's something the English School District has been monitoring here. The number of absent students in this province has increased during the pandemic. So let's compare the numbers going into the school year. September 2019, the English School District reported absenteeism at 6.2%. That number jumped to 9.1% in the next year, in 2020. Well, what about this past January? Absenteeism was 9.5%. That's up from 8.4% the year before. And February saw a similar jump. 11.4% of students were absent this year. That's up from the year before, when 9% of students were absent the same month. And across the country and the world, there are concerns that missing students may never return to their studies. Some haven't made the move to online learning, in some cases because they don't have access to it. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson has this report.
When we talk about learning during the pandemic, Irvin Student says there's one group of kids no one is considering.
They're out of school with no prospect of return.
Student and his think tank started an international commission to help locate and reintegrate the students who stopped attending school of any kind during the pandemic.
When we closed the schools here, we presumed that everyone elegantly went online. And we forgot that at least 6% of the population in Canada has no access to online.
6% of school kids in the provinces that had substantial school closures is 200,000 kids.
On top of that, abusive homes, very poor homes, children with problems in English or parents with problems in English.
200,000 kids.
Teacher and behavioral expert Kirby Mitchell says there's another type of student who has disappeared from the system.
Students that I'm used to seeing wandering the halls, they're no longer there. Students I'm used to seeing acting out in class, they're no longer there. And so those numbers I see as students that don't fit the online space, as well as the current classroom where you have to follow certain restrictions.
My biggest worry is that it's going to get so bad that we will never be able to get these kids back in. We'll never be able to reach them again.
This problem is attracting global attention. The United Nations recently estimated 12 million kids globally have dropped out of school during the pandemic.
This is a serious problem, and I do think that the UN Secretary General has a complete point about that it could be a generational catastrophe.
Preventing that catastrophe starts with finding out exactly how many kids are missing, who they are, and where they've gone. There are efforts by individual teachers and schools to find the missing kids, but few school boards have a specific post-pandemic plan in place to track them down and get them back in the system. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
To Ontario, now where top public health officials in the three biggest communities are calling for tougher restrictions. Medical officers of health in Toronto, Peel, and Ottawa say a stay-at-home order is needed. In a letter to Ontario's top doctor, they say cases have been rising rapidly in Toronto and Peel, even though lockdowns have been in force for weeks. Ontario is already under what the provincial government calls shutdown measures. They came into effect over the Easter weekend, but the three chief doctors say it's not enough.
On your street, hoo, 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 on your street. Hi, my name is Cameron Jenkins. I am 9 years old, and welcome to the beautiful province of Newfoundland and Labrador. The weather is getting warmer, and our communities are full of so much we can explore. Newfoundland has some of the most scenic trails like this one here in Carbonear. With 29,000 kilometers of coastlines and close to 300 hiking and walking trails, you're sure to find one you will enjoy. The exercise you will get is good for you, but you can make it so much more fun with rocks like these. For the last few years, my family and I have been painting rocks and hiding them along trails, walking paths, and boardwalks. You can hide and find so many different ones by many different people. Take a photo with your rock, post your photo on NL Rock Art on Facebook so the person who painted it knows you found it, and re-hide it. Or, if you love it so much, keep it and hide one of your own instead. Sometimes, I just like to leave some smiles for people to take, because you never know when someone just needs a smile. So grab some rocks, paint your designs, and hide them like me. For CBC Kids News, I'm Cameron Jenkins. Now back to you, CBC. On your street.
So good. Thank you so much, Cameron. That was a fantastic report. And yes, you're right. You never know when someone needs a smile.
If you've got a budding reporter in your family, head to our website, cbc.ca/nl, click on the community page, and you'll find instructions on how to make your own news report. Who knows, we may even play it right here and now.
That was so good.
So good. Very impressed.
Yeah. And so long-range forecast now, how are things looking?
Well, it really depends on where you are across the province. We're in these persistent easterlies, so unfortunately, any east-facing coastlines are going to see the RDF continue. Let's take a look at the future tracker through Thursday. You can see some periods of rain will continue, but along the west coast, we start to see a little bit of break in that cloud cover as some drier air moves in, which means we'll see some peaks of sun through the afternoon, but again, some cloud cover continuing up through portions of Labrador, as well as some rain along the coast through the afternoon on Thursday. And then in behind that, some colder air will move in, and that's going to change things over to the potential for some snow overnight Thursday into Friday morning. And that snow potential is going to work its way further south as well, heading towards the northern peninsula Friday night into Saturday, and it will continue to sweep across the northeast as we head into Saturday and even into Sunday as well. But again, some clearing skies in behind that for the afternoon on Friday and then into Saturday as well for the west coast. So taking a look at the temperatures over the next couple of days, staying into the above zero temperatures for Labrador, for 3 to 5 degrees, again with some more sunshine in play, but also the potential for some flurries. For the west coast, going to hover around 9 degrees for Corner Brook on Thursday, but some warmer temperatures for the southwest. Portabass should see sunshine. You can see that shift in the winds as well. About 13 degrees for you. Cooler temperatures along the northeast. 5 degrees will be the story for St. John's, and again with the RDF continuing through the day. Not much of a change in the forecast for Friday, but again as you head west, some warmer temperatures and some more sunshine in the forecast, and there's that snow I was talking about, in with some cooler temperatures as well, hovering around 0 degrees for Nain, 2 in Cartwright, and 3 for Lab City for your Friday. Looking ahead for eastern areas of the island, this is what you're looking at. So the RDF continuing through Thursday, Friday. We'll see a little bit of a break on Saturday as far as that fog is concerned, but also bringing in that potential for some flurries. Those overnight lows hovering around 0 or 1 degree, so the potential for flurries will certainly be in play there. For central Newfoundland, same thing, more in the way of flurries on Saturday, but that'll be in the morning because temperatures will be climbing up to about 6 degrees. Same thing for Sunday, changing over to the potential for some showers. And then for the west coast, a lot more sunshine in your forecast through Saturday, Sunday. The cloudy skies will return, and also those temperatures into the single digits. For eastern Labrador, by the time we get to the end of the week, that's when things will start to get in a little bit cooler. And then same thing for western Labrador, but a little bit more sunshine in play for Saturday, and Sunday looks like a return of some showers and warmer temperatures. Wanted to share this photo. This is Good Friday view of Kitty Vitty Lake. Tracy shared that one. If you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Beautiful.
Very nice shot.
And before we finish up, quickly, Peter, there's going to be a briefing tomorrow, right? What are you expecting to hear tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow is briefing day. Vaccination numbers. Interestingly, there's been more than 40,000 doses delivered to the province over the last week. We're now up to almost 90,000 doses administered, so we'll be talking about that. And of course, the debate over in-person instruction for high school students. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions for Dr. Fitzgerald about that as well.
Great. Thanks so much. Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.